Chapter 351 A terrifying explosion. How could Huo Yuao's abilities not make them fearful? They weren't afraid of Tang Wu on the competition stage. They were afraid of the 5 formidable evil soul masters beneath the arena, who were just standing there spookily. They were no longer masking their auras. An evil soul master who was still so young was already so horrifying. He had defeated and murdered that girl, who had an angel martial soul and possessed the holy element, and swallowed her up entirely. If that was the case, then what kind of abilities did these stronger evil soul masters possess? Huo Yuao nodded at Yulin and said, "Since I've won, then please give me the prize, Chief Judge." Shadows appeared one after another beside Huo Yuao. The Holy Ghost Church's vice founder had taken her 4 elders onto the competition stage. The vice founder stared at Yulin with a sinister look in her eyes. She didn't say anything, but the aura that was rising from her body caused Yulin to recoil in fear. Transcendent Douluo. She's actually a transcendent Douluo. She's an evil transcendent Douluo. Nangongwan was very pleased and satisfied at this moment. He raised his voice and said, "The Radiant City Elite Soul Engineering Tournament's championship belongs to the Duskwater Alliance. From this moment onwards, our wager is complete." And Li Tong, Shangdanfire, what else do you have to say? The elders from the other 2 underground organizations were already on their feet at this point, and Li Tong wore a black face, and he wanted to retort, but he ultimately held himself back as he surveyed the 5 mighty evil soul masters on the competition stage. He shook his head painfully. Shangdanfire's dainty face seemed a little slack as her eyes were filled with agony. Yigi's death had dealt a heavy blow to her. Nangongwan said proudly, "All right, since there's nothing else you wish to say, then we will proceed according to the tournament's rules. Come to the Duskwater Alliance's headquarters tomorrow, and we will have a thorough follow-up discussion." And Li Tong snorted coldly before he turned and led his company away. Shangdanfire's face suddenly became vengeful as she shot a hateful glare at Huo Yuao, before she also turned and left. The tournament was over, concluded in such a shocking and breathtaking fashion, and the aristocrats, the audience, and even the gamblers who had won some money hurriedly got to their feet and swiftly disappeared, one after another. They really didn't want to see that horrifying devil hidden underneath his human-shaped soul tool. Yes, Huo Yuao was no different from the devil in their eyes at this moment. Huo Yuao's prizes were laid out one by one in front of him. Rare metals were placed in front of him, ton after ton, and then there was the insurmountable Class 9 soul tool, the Sun Moon Divine Needle. The Sun Moon Divine Needle was actually 2 ring-shaped soul tools, one larger than the other. The first ring was about 1.5 meters in diameter, while the smaller one was roughly 1 meter in diameter. The larger one was golden, and the smaller one was silver. Sophisticated patterns were engraved all over their surface, and even Huo Yuao felt a little dizzy just looking at it, even though he could be considered a Class 7 soul engineer. Yi Lin heaved a sigh and passed the Sun Moon Divine Needle to Huo Yuao. He lowered his voice and said, "You need to have at least 8 soul rings before you can use it. Otherwise, you won't be able to control it at all, and you won't even have enough soul power to support it. Don't attempt to break and copy my soul tool, because it will rip your body into a million pieces. That's all." Yi Lin paused after this. The Starsky Douluo couldn't control himself in the end, and asked, "I'm quite interested in your human-shaped soul tool structure. If you're willing, you can sell its blueprint to me. The price can be negotiated. This is how you can contact me." He passed Huo Yuao a card as he spoke. "Okay." Huo Yuao said nothing more and took the card. Hikaiju had arrived beside Huo Yuao, and his shoulder touched Huo Yuao's shoulder. Huo Yuao turned around and glanced at him, and a faint smile appeared on Hikaiju's face. 5 mighty evil soul masters had sealed away every possible escape path beside them at this moment, and every single evil soul master had satisfied smiles on their faces besides the vice founder, whose facial expression was masked. Huo Yuao smiled as well, except his smile was hidden inside his human-shaped soul tool. It's almost time. Inside the underground warehouse. Boom. Countless metal fragments flew in all directions. However, the reinforced underground palace didn't quake too much. Some of the rare metals that were closer to the warehouse's first gate scattered across the ground, triggering several soul rays that fired off randomly. Shu Goshong dispelled the smoke in front of him with a somber look on his face. The soul rays were blocked by an invisible barrier a meter from his body. The underground warehouse's defense system was established too perfectly, so much so that it had taken them an exceedingly long time to destroy the various booby traps before they could attempt to break down the first floor's main gate. It wasn't hard to imagine how many losses they had already incurred, and the repairs would also cost a tremendous amount of money and time. But Shu Gojong had no choice, as he had to enter the underground warehouse as quickly as possible so that he could take stock and calculate his losses. Furthermore, nobody else could know about this episode. They would have to try their best to keep this a secret. Otherwise, it wouldn't be too difficult for the Crown Prince, Shu Tianman, to impeach him. He would be in real trouble if that happened. Powerful soul rays erupted from behind Shu Goshong's back in a tight volley, and his soul engineers destroyed all the soul tools on the floor. One of the Class 8 soul engineers said, "It seems like the booby traps and the defense mechanisms are all right. They can still be triggered, which means they're still operational. Let me scout ahead, my lord." Shu Goshong's complexion became a little bare at this show of his subordinate's loyalty. He nodded gently and said, "Be careful." "Yes." The Class 8 soul engineer stepped into the warehouse routinely and easily as he swiftly checked out the situation on the first floor. His voice quickly came back from the distance. "My lord, nothing has been stolen from the first floor, but the gate leading to the second floor has been destroyed. All the traps and defense mechanisms are intact, and they don't seem like they've been triggered. It seems like somebody familiar with our place has done this." Shu Goshong led his company forward, avoiding the miscellaneous traps as they quickly advanced to the gate leading to the second floor. He saw the metal dust and fragments strewn all over the ground, and bent down and pinched some in his fingers to take a look. Shu Goshong was a Class 9 soul engineer, so it wasn't hard to imagine how familiar he was with metal. His expression quickly changed as he muttered, "These particles have lost all metallic elements, as if they're just dust. How is that possible? This gate was made from more than 10 different alloys, and the gate itself possessed a protective soul barrier. Breaking it down should have triggered the alarm. How did the intruders accomplish this? Li Chong is the mole." He had a clear judgment in his head. Li Chong was nowhere to be seen, while the traps and defense mechanisms outside hadn't been triggered, and only certain setups and mechanisms had been destroyed all the way inside. This would be impossible unless the intruders were familiar with this place. So Li Chong was the prime suspect. He fit the bill, and he had been standing guard before this, too. A vindictive look flickered across Shu Goshong's eyes as he lowered his voice and said, "Onto the second floor." The second floor was where the most precious metals were kept. At this moment, Shu Goshong wasn't that worried anymore. In the end, most rare metals were very dense and heavy, so thieves couldn't take that much away even if they had storage-type soul tools for transport. These losses wouldn't be much to the colossal warehouse, compared to the inventory they had accumulated over so many years. Shu Goshong was confident in his ability to keep this incident quiet if they didn't lose too much. However, Shu Goshong's face quickly turned dark and gloomy when they entered the second floor. The piles of rare metals that were originally neatly arranged had disappeared in enormous patches, and his estimate of his losses reached a horrendous level even before he was only 10 meters in. Bastard. He must have planned this. He's stolen the most valuable metals. Shu Goshong's face was so somber it felt like his emotions were dripping down his face. The color on his face turned a few shades blacker the deeper he went. His losses were far greater than his original estimations, and they couldn't be measured with money at this point. This was especially true because several rare metals had completely disappeared. Among them was the diamond essence gold. They hadn't even had 1 ton of it in this warehouse, and now not a single speck of it remained. And that was only one example. Oh no. "My lord, the third floor's gate has been opened." One of his subordinates' voices could be heard from far away. Shu Goshong suddenly felt a little lightheaded, and he nearly fainted. "The third floor's gate has been opened." An extremely ominous feeling swiftly rose from his heart. Shu Goshong briskly brought his subordinates to the gate leading down to the third floor. This gate was broken down in the same way that the second floor's gate had been destroyed. The tufto had been converted into dust and nothingness. What helped him relax a little was that soul tools missing from the third floor's immense and vast storage space weren't so obvious. Steal them. Steal them, bastard. You're so good. Hey, why didn't you take them all away?" Shu Goshong bellowed hysterically. Storage-type soul tools had a limit to the volume that they could contain, but the stolen rare metals still gave him a splitting heartache. "Go check it out and see if we're missing anything from the third floor." His subordinates' trembling voices quickly traveled back to his ears. "Your Highness, all the sealed milk bottles and stationary soul cannon shells Class 5 and above have been stolen." A fountain of fresh blood erupted from Shu Goshong's mouth, and his face turned ghastly white. "Ruthless. Li Chong, that bastard, is too inhuman. He actually Right at that moment, Shigoshong's eyes suddenly floated subconsciously in a certain direction, because a faint red light seemed to be coming from that way. The red light expanded very swiftly, and it didn't take long before the stationary cannon shells stacked up like mountains beneath it were covered with a layer of red light. Shigoshong was a Class 9 Sol engineer, and he quickly discerned what the red light was as a hopeless look flashed across his eyes. He mumbled under his breath, a timed explosive bomb. Red light surged into the sky. Thank you for your contributions to our alliance, Tang Wu. These belong to you. The Dusk Order Alliance placed the rewards in front of Huo Yuao, including the Class 9 stationary Sol cannon shell. Huo Yuao pocketed everything without acting courteous at all. These rewards were one of his most important goals in this tournament. Thank you, sir. If there's nothing else, we'll take our leave. Huo Yuao was still inside his human-shaped soul tool at this moment. He raised his middle leg and was about to walk away. Wait. The vice founder raised her hand and blocked Huo Yuao and Hikadu's path. Huo Yuao muttered plainly, "What's up? We've helped you clinch the championship. Are you still not letting us go?" The vice founder smiled faintly and said, "Of course not, but there are some things that I wish to discuss with you. Judging from your abilities, you seem like an evil soul master." Huo Yuao didn't respond directly. What does that have to do with you guys? The vice founder didn't react emotionally at all because of Huo Yuao's cold attitude. She continued amicably, "Of course that has something to do with us. Because we are the same." An aura that instilled intense fear into Huo Yuao and Hikadu's hearts instantly rose from her body as she spoke. Grayish blue light expanded from behind her back, and an exceedingly sharp and shrill howl could be heard. The grayish blue light surged into the sky and condensed into a phoenix, while the eerie evil aura painted the sky above the competition stage grayish blue with incredible speed. Such a mighty aura of evil. No matter how powerful Huo Yuao and Hikadu were, they felt their entire bodies turn cold and stiff as they sensed the aura that emanated from the vice founder's body. It was like their spirits had been locked away. Evil phoenix. That was actually the evil phoenix. It was a formidable martial soul that was almost considered ultimate evil. The vice founder was undoubtedly a transcendent Douluo, and she was possibly higher than rank 95. The 4 elders behind her took a few steps back, their faces overcome with respect and admiration. The vice founder's voice was very warm and gentle. "Look, we're one and the same. Even though I can't tell what your evil martial soul is, you can have everything you want if you join us." There was a peculiar charm in her voice, and her voice made Huo Yuao feel as if his heart was pounding out of his chest. "You can use the power of light to unleash your abilities as an evil soul master, and I'm a big fan of your necromantic summoning abilities. You are the holy son that my church has been looking for, and we are very delighted that you have come to us. Join us, and you will be the future dictator of the world." Not everyone in the audience had departed at this point. Those normal citizens who were still here were transformed into grayish blue statues as the grayish blue light shone on them from the sky. They couldn't move at all, and they seemed to be struggling against frightened spirits above their heads. Huo Yuao felt his heart sink. The Holy Ghost Church was so unbridled and unscrupulous. What did that mean? It meant they had absolute faith in their strength. It was at this time that the vice founder's eyes suddenly turned toward the city, as if she had felt something. In the next moment, everyone began to feel the earth trembling faintly beneath their feet. Elderson also felt this, even from some distance away. He turned around in shock, and he was one step earlier than the vice founder to realize that something was amiss. However, his perception was different from that of the Holy Ghost Church's vice founder. He was far more sensitive, and he could tell that this quake was coming from the location Huo Yuao had released the green signal from before. What's happening? The same doubt arose in everyone's hearts. The vice founder soared into the sky and transformed into a grayish blue light projection as she swept through the air. She was moving way too quickly, and took the grayish blue radiance that had spread out across the sky with her. The vice founder gazed down upon Radiant City from 1,000 meters up in the sky. Her initially calm and composed eyes transformed in that instant, and her pupils became as thin as a needle's tip as she witnessed something that she would never forget for the rest of her life. Something was happening in one corner of Radiant City. There was no warning at all as large masses of structures and buildings suddenly collapsed and sank, while stone and gravel were hurled into the sky from where the ground was collapsing inwards. The great earth roared furiously in the next moment. The ground that had sunk now began to rise with lightning speed, and a colossal mushroom cloud accompanied by unrivaled explosive power surged into the sky. The vice founder was watching from 1,000 meters in the sky, but she was still impacted this horrifying scene. She plummeted down at once, and lay down flat on the ground. Boom, 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 boom. The earth was moaning and thundering. Everything was trembling and quaking, and it seemed as if hell itself had descended upon Radiant City in that instant. An incomparably terrifying explosive impact swept over a third of the greatest city on the continent in the blink of an eye, and intense shockwaves shook the entire city. Uncounted tons of gravel and dust flew in all directions as millions of fragments and bits of debris soared into the sky. Soil and earth billowed through the air as the scorching and horrifying shockwaves continued to ripple through the city. This effect was something that not even Class 9 stationary Sol cannon shells could accomplish. The entirety of Radiant City was quivering and groaning from the explosion, and was crumbling before it. There were more than 10 million people from all over the continent here in Radiant City to participate in and watch the tournaments. There were a lot more who were gathered in the western suburbs, or waiting for the Radiant City Elite Sol Engineering Tournament's results. However, 1/3 of Radiant City had already collapsed. How many lives would those frightening shockwaves take? The sky was dark and gloomy over the Douluo continent on this day, and the world was transformed. Huo Yuao was the perpetrator, but even he had no idea that his actions would lead to something so crazily horrifying. There was no color on Huo Yuao's face at this moment. He didn't dare to bring Hikato and himself into his spectral demiplane because the petrifying explosion that resembled an apocalypse seemed to blow the heterogeneous space around them into smithereens. A yellow shadow appeared behind Huo Yuao and Hikato amidst the hurricane of stone and gravel and picked them up, one person in each hand. The 3 of them disappeared without a trace amidst a few flickers of light. "You guys did this?" Elderson's deep voice rang out beside Huo Yuao's ear. Huo Yuao was still inside his human-shaped soul tool, but he subconsciously nodded his head. What a massacre. Elderson's elderly voice was filled with sorrow and astonishment. He lowered his voice and said, "Don't ever speak of this to anyone. Do you understand?" "Yes." Huo Yuao's voice was trembling as an indescribable agony rose from his heart. He hadn't expected something like this to happen, but he would trigger an explosion so horrifying that it almost wiped out the entirety of Radiant City. Huo Yuao naturally understood the pain in Elderson's voice. An explosion like this would take countless lives, and there were many more who would slowly slip into the void. This was truly a massacre. The death toll was bound to be counted in tens of thousands, at least. And he, the ultimate soldier, was the perpetrator and the assassin. Huo Yuao's lips were tightly pressed against each other as Elderson swiftly brought them away as if they were ragdolls. The Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament's grand finals were utterly meaningless at this moment, but there was one thing that Huo Yuao had achieved. This great explosion, known by later generations as the Day of Darkness and Destruction, had absolutely delayed the Sun Moon Empire's plans to invade the Douluo continent. Huo Yuao, an ultimate soldier, had achieved a level of destructiveness unmatched across human history. Huo Yuao would be known as the Eyes of the Asura in the future, and the Asura in his name stemmed from this terrifying explosion. The other members of the Tang Sect who had helped to accomplish this feat were also trembling inside. At this moment, their faces were all devoid of color as they lay prostrate on the ground and felt the impact of the cyclone of stone and sand. They felt the earth's moans, and nobody knew what to do. The earth split open in another place, and peculiar giant soul tools emerged from the ground, one after another. The body Douluo, Dubusi, was leading the Dalu Empire and the Heavenly Soul Empire's company, and they stared with slack jaws and widened eyes at the mushroom cloud looming over Radiant City. They found it hard to believe what had just happened. In fact, nobody knew what exactly had just happened. Did Shrek Academy do that? Shu Juji stared at the mushroom cloud rising through the sky with lackluster eyes. She could feel the ground still shaking intensely where they were, kilometers away from the explosion, and her beautiful eyes were filled with an indescribable fear at this moment. Wei Na's eyes were also blank with astonishment as she muttered under her breath, What exploded? That can result in something like that. How many people will die? Dubusi was equally astounded. I'll concede if Shrek Academy really did this. It seems like all we can do are parlor tricks in comparison. Their three companies represented the Sun Moon Empire's greatest enemies in Radiant City at this moment. The Douluo Empire and the Heavenly Soul Empire had a backup plan, and they had used ground drilling soul tools that they had specifically researched to escape Radiant City underneath the Eastern Front. The Sun Moon Empire's army couldn't stop them in the end. However, not in their wildest dreams did they expect to see such a magnificent sight, which was so apocalyptic at the same time. Fewer than 10% of the reinforced structures in the Sun Moon Empire's Imperial Palace had collapsed. Fortunately, the Imperial Palace was located in the center of the city, and wasn't encompassed in the one-third that had been annihilated. There was no color on Chu Tianran's face as Juzi carried him on her back and squirmed out from underneath a pile of rubble. She stared at the colossal mushroom cloud in the distance, and at everything that had been destroyed around them. Her eyes grew slack and lifeless. Right at that moment, shadow after shadow gathered in the sky. Hearty laughter could be heard, and even the mysterious Imperial tutor had joined them at some point. The Holy Ghost Church's evil soul masters and their sinister auras soared into the sky, one after another. Destruction was calamity and disaster for normal people, but for them, it was an opportunity that they dreamed of. There's so much resentment, and the spirits are so strong. Ha ha ha. Shrek Academy's company began to move after their temporary astonishment. Elder Sun's face was as gloomy as could be while he took everyone and raced toward the horizon. Most of Shrek Academy's powerful individuals didn't know what had happened, and nobody knew why this scene had occurred. A handful of people, including Zhang Lisun, could faintly guess that the Tang Sect had catalyzed and caused the apocalyptic episode in some way. Wang Donga, Wang Qiuer, and Xiaoxiao were the clearest about the entire process. They were the ones who had installed the timed explosive bomb. Huo Yuao had deliberately damaged the elevator and the first floor's gate before they exited the underground warehouse, so that the inevitable inspection to come would take as long as possible. Everything had been within his calculations. He didn't make a single mistake, and he was extremely precise even with their timed explosive bomb. The only thing he hadn't predicted was the final explosion's force and impact. The timed explosive was placed beneath all the stationary cannon shells. There had been at least tens of thousands of stationary cannon shells, possibly more, that they hadn't been able to take away. Huo Yuao's goal had been simple. He wanted to destroy the underground warehouse, and he wanted the explosion to vaporize all the rare metals that they couldn't take away, along with all the low-level soul tools. That way, the Sun Moon Empire's invasion plans would be delayed by the tremendous losses. According to Huo Yuao's estimations of the stationary cannon shells, the explosive impact would only spread for 1 kilometer because the detonation was 100 meters beneath the surface. The explosion would trigger an enormous earthquake, and the illustrious Virtue Hall would take the full force of this disaster, as they were located right next to it. The Sun Moon Empire would suffer unimaginable losses if this underground warehouse and the illustrious Virtue Hall were destroyed at the same time, and that had been enough for him. What Huo Yuao didn't know was that there was another underground warehouse, dug out beneath the illustrious Virtue Hall. This warehouse was even more protected and guarded than the one they had found, and a total of 16 Class 9 stationary cannon shells were stored there. The explosion he had triggered awakened these tools of destruction slumbering deep beneath the ground. 16 Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells, in addition to tens of thousands of stationary soul cannon shells below Class 5. Everything compounded to create this calamity within Radiant City, the lightless day of destruction. It was a day that the Sun Moon Empire would remember forever. Shrek Academy's team finally escaped into the Western Mountains. However, everyone felt as if their legs were going soft. They couldn't imagine how anybody could survive the core of that frightening explosion. Let's take a break, Elder Sun ordered with a black look on his face. Elder Sun was still holding Huo Yuao, who seemed as lifeless as a zombie inside his soul tool, and quickly pulled him to one side. He lowered his voice and said, "Everyone from the Tang Sect, come here. Wang Qiuer, Lisun, come here as well." Everyone lowered their heads and walked over briskly as they heard Elder Sun's solemn voice. The other powerful individuals from the academy had the same thought. It can't be. The explosion within Radiant City was actually caused by. Nobody could stop this thought from flooding their minds, and everyone's eyes turned slack. Elder Sun placed Huo Yuao's soul tool on the ground. He lowered his voice and said, "Open it and come out." Huo Yuao opened his human-shaped soul tool like a robot and revealed his ghastly pale face. Wang Donga hurriedly came forward and helped him out. Elder Sun stared at Huo Yuao, and then at the others around him. His face seemed as solemn as could be as he said, "Who's going to tell me what happened? Speak now." The lifelessness look in Huo Yuao's eyes vanished, and his eyes became focused once more. He raised his head determinedly and said, "I did it, Elder Sun. I was the one who set everything up. We discovered one of the Sun Moon Empire's underground warehouses, and there were a lot of rare metals stored inside, along with hosts of soul tools and stationary soul cannon shells. I buried a timed explosive bomb beneath the stationary cannon shells." Elder Sun drew a cold breath. He had already guessed it, but he could still feel the immense impact when he heard it from Huo Yuao's mouth. He couldn't help but say, Yuao, do you know how many lives will have been lost? How many innocent citizens have died? We have to be the continent's guardians, not its executioners. You. Huo Yuao lowered his head and clenched his fists tightly. "This was all my fault, Elder Sun. I will not push away my responsibility, and you can punish me in any way you wish. But can we settle that after we leave the Western Mountains? My spiritual detection should still be useful for everyone." Huo Yuao can't take all the blame, Elder Sun. Wang Donga held Huo Yuao tightly in her embrace, and sounded very emotional. "We didn't know this would happen." Huo Yuao discovered the underground warehouse with his spiritual detection, and he risked damage to his own spirit by separating his spiritual avatar today so that he could lead us into that underground warehouse. Even though he was in a perilous situation himself, he did all that so that we could collect enough rare metals for the Tang Sect and the Academy's future development. At the same time, he wanted to see if we could set the Sun Moon Empire back in some way so that we could disrupt their invasion plans in the future. Huo Yuao led us after we entered the underground palace, and we found where the rare metals were stored. There was just too much in there, so much that the Sun Moon Empire could easily mass-produce soul tools for war. We went deeper inside, until we reached the 3rd floor, where the manufactured soul tools were. We took the high-level stationary soul cannon shells and left everything else. Only those things could have detonated. Huo Yuao calculated it carefully. That place was 100 meters below the surface, and its structure was exceptionally reinforced. The explosive impact wouldn't be that great even if an explosion was triggered inside the warehouse. Yuao estimated that a small earthquake would occur, and the surface would tremble a little intensely, at most. Our main goal was to destroy the soul tools stored within that warehouse, and it would be great if the explosive force could destroy some of the rare metals outside. At the same time, the sounds produced by the explosion would give him an opportunity to escape the western suburbs. Thus, we went ahead with the plan. We don't know why the explosive force suddenly became so powerful. Everything has far exceeded our expectations, while the outcome was also very abnormal. Huo Yuao just wanted to delay the Sun Moon Empire's invasion plans. Think about it, Elder Sun. This incident that has led to so much bloodshed and so many lives lost is truly an accident. However, such a circumstance only happened because some other unknown explosives were triggered. If those explosives, along with the soul tools and stationary cannon shells that we destroyed, were used in their invasion, so many more people would have died. I'm afraid that number might have been 10 times or even 100 times more than the lives that were lost today. Therefore, I don't think you added anything wrong. If you wish to punish him, then punish me too. I support everything that he's done. Wang Donga's voice was unwaveringly determined as she clasped Huo Yuao's right hand tightly. Suffering bred true intimacy. Dongo standing with me at such a crucial moment. She wasn't terrified by that frightening explosion, and she hasn't chided or scolded me at all. She's supporting me. Huo Yuao's astonishment, agony, guilt, helplessness, self-blame, and all his other negative emotions receded conspicuously in the face of her stubborn support. His psychological and mental strength had always been superior to the average person's, and his lover was standing with him at a time like this. Huo Yuao's eyes were already determined, but now they began to flare with even more perseverance and fortitude. Wang Qiu walked out and stared at Elder Sun as she said, even if you insist on blaming someone, who are you? I can't take all the blame. He was only in his spiritual form at the time, and he couldn't do anything at all. Donga, Xiao, and I were the ones who installed that timed explosive bomb, so we are the perpetrators. And if we are, then so be it. Things have already turned out this way, so there's no point talking about it anymore. Wang Qiu's words displayed her unswerving toughness, in contrast to Wang Dong's reasonable argument. Her personality didn't change one bit, even though she was speaking to Elder Sun. Xiao nodded and said, yes, Qiu is right. The three of us are the perpetrators. This has nothing to do with Hu Yuao. He was just helping us calculate, and only the three of us could execute any actual operations. We were the ones who made the final decision. Hu Yuao forced to laugh and said, you guys don't have to help me carry this responsibility. A mistake is a mistake, and now that I think about it, triggering an explosion in that warehouse probably triggered an explosion in another warehouse. Those explosives were likely to be high-level soul tools stored within Illustrious Virtue Hall. I should have thought about that. Our explosion was so close to the Illustrious Virtue Hall. After all, destroying the Illustrious Virtue Hall was part of our plan, but I was too eager to accomplish that, and being eager for success led to this disaster. Many innocent citizens are probably dead, especially so because the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament was still ongoing. There were surely many travelers in Radiant City. He pressed his lips tightly together after this sentence. Even though he didn't like the Sun Moon Empire, the Empire's citizens were innocent, and the consequences of this disaster were unimaginable. He had no idea what the actual death count was like inside Radiant City. Elder Sun's emotions had settled down a little. He was about to say something when an amiable, but somewhat authoritative voice rang out. Elder Sun, this matter has nothing to do with them at all. Yuao and I were the ones who planned the whole thing, and I am the Tang Sect's eldest senior brother, so I was the one who had the final say in whether we carried out this operation. All this would never have happened if I hadn't made that decision. I am no longer worthy of staying in the inner courtyard, and I request the Academy expel me as punishment. Bei Bei's voice was calm, but determined. His face was still a little pale, but he could move now. Bei Bei slowly walked in front of Hu Yuao and stood between him and Elder Yuan. Elder Sun's eyes shone as he stared at Bei Bei and waited for him to continue. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.